Welcome. Thank you for watching and thank you for your patience as we sorted through some quick issues there. I'm Chiara, pronouns she, her. I'm one of the interim secretary treasurers here at the Indie Sellers Guild. I'm also chair of the organizing committee and the bylaws committee. Today, on Labor Day, we are thrilled to announce the official launch of the Indie Sellers Guild. The Indie Sellers Guild is an international nonprofit to function as a union for online independent sellers of handmade, vintage, unique, and craft goods. Born from the groundbreaking Etsy strike in April of this year, sellers and supporters have continued working to build solidarity and leverage our numbers to advocate for ourselves collectively. We have helped show the world that Etsy sellers aren't just folksy crafters and side hobbyists, we're workers. It's our hard work that enables Etsy to rake in hundreds of millions of dollars and grow to be the massively successful company it is today. Yet we have fewer rights and less of a say in our workplace than ever. We deserve a voice, we deserve a place at the table, and we deserve a share in the success that we create. At the Indie Sellers Guild, we are working hard to make ourselves heard. We seek to represent sellers speaking with one voice to corporations, the media, legislators, and the general public. We seek to harness the power inherent in our vast numbers to advocate collectively for fair and transparent policies in online marketplaces. We seek to build a community where we can connect and provide resources and share information, education, and best practices to lift up all indie sellers. Finally, like a union, we are a democratic organization created by indie sellers for indie sellers, where everyone has an equal voice and any member can get involved. As of today, membership in the Indie Sellers Guild is open for all independent online sellers and supporters. We've been hard at work over the last few months building a new kind of labor organization that can connect sellers all over the world and respond to the needs of our non-traditional workplace. Workers everywhere are organizing, rejecting big tech's idea that we are just small cogs in their machine that don't deserve the rights of employees. We have joined in that fight. We are the Indie Sellers Guild. And now to tell you the story of how we went from a post on Reddit to a grassroots movement to a labor organization with thousands of members, I'm happy to introduce our president, Christy.
Hi, everybody. Wow, what a year it has been. Really happy to be here. I kind of am still a little bit in shock. I kind of can't believe how things have grown so much in this time. Um, so I thought I'd start off this little presentation by telling you a little bit about me. Um, I am I've been on Etsy since 2006. I make this stuff. I am the Cheshire Cat in the photo in this slide. Now, in talking to other Etsy sellers about all the recent platform changes, I've noticed that those of us who are really unhappy, we have a few things in common. Typically, we're people whose items take a long time to make, or we're people who sell one of a kind things, or people who make things to order for customers. I check all three of those boxes. So if you are one of those sellers that is really fed up with the changes at Etsy, I feel your pain. As part of my presentation, I thought we'd have fun. We are going to play a game of trivia. It'll test your knowledge of Etsy and some of our movement too. If you know the answer to a question, type it in the chat. Our original focus group of 150 sellers found each other on Reddit when I made a post about how we needed to band together and fight back. What was the title of my post? Was it A, we need to plan an Etsy strike, or B, we need an Etsy sellers union? Which do you think it was? Type the answer in the chat. Ooh, I'm impressed. Most of you got it. It is B, we need an Etsy sellers union. Although, if you had answered an Etsy strike, I would completely understood. We have kind of been all about an Etsy strike for a very long time. But From the beginning, this was supposed to be an Etsy seller union. The strike was only the beginning. And there's my post. Now, second question. Before our Etsy strike gained international press coverage and reached 82,000 people in only 4 weeks' time, there were other vacation mode strikes. When was the first Etsy strike? Does anybody know when the first Etsy strike? It was called Protesty, if that gives you a little bit of a clue. This one is kind of a tough one because it was a long time ago. The correct answer is 2012. Now, the first strike, I knew all about it. Back in those days, Etsy didn't have to try to lure us to the forums with should post about your 100th sale type pop-ups. We actually hung out there and talked to each other. That strike happened because people reported a shop for reselling, and Etsy investigated and found that the seller was actually making items, but that they had hired help. Not all of us agreed with that strike. Some of us were like, Etsy investigated and they said they have information we don't that proves the person does belong on Etsy. Okay. This next one is also going to be really tough unless you've been on Etsy for a really long time, but let's see if you know. Can you tell me who this guy is? Does anybody know? All right, on I go with the tough questions. I'll go ahead and let you guys know. This is Chad Dickerson, Etsy's CEO back in 2012. Now, I mention him because Etsy was so different back then, and how they responded to the strike tells us a lot about it. It was everybody pretty much knew about it because we were so small and we were so close knit. And then on May 9th, the day before the strike was supposed to happen, Etsy revealed that they had become a certified B Corp, or a corporation for public benefit. It's really interesting. We can see right on this announcement that Etsy gives a reason why they became B Corp certified. We believe that business has a higher social purpose beyond simply profit. When they did that to us sellers, it felt like they were saying, we see you, we hear you, we don't agree, but we understand that you need assurance that we still have your best interests at heart. Here you go. Here's the proof. All right. Next question. I think you guys know who this guy is. This is Josh Silverman, Etsy's current CEO. But does anybody know when he became the CEO of Etsy? Waiting. It was in 2017. Now, after that, things started changing at Etsy a lot. In November of 2016, Josh Silverman joined Etsy's board. In May of 2017, the board fired Chad Dickerson and replaced him with Silverman. In May through June of 2017, Etsy laid off almost 25% of his workforce. In December 2017, Etsy dropped B Corp certification. In July of 2018 was the first transaction freeze, 3.5% to 5%. July 2019 was Etsy's free shipping push. May 2020 was when off-site ads charges started, and that added a 12 to 15% fee on some of our sales. And then July 2021 was the Star Seller program. And April 22, the second transaction fee increase, which we all know very much about. I was active on Etsy all the way from 2017 through the beginning of the strike in 2022. For more than a decade, it was great, and it felt like I had a solid foundation to build my business on. But then in the last 4 years, with change after change, that's been really good for Etsy, but not so good for us. It's like trying to build a business on shifting sand. A lot of us, we know we should leave and try to make it on our own, but how? It's about all we can do to keep our heads above the quicksand. And it would be one thing if Etsy were getting better as it's getting bigger, but it's not. It's getting worse. All right, I am going to get off my soapbox for a little little bit now. We're going to get back to our game of trivia. Next, we have a true or false. The most important demand to the Etsy strike of 2022 was cancel the fee increase. True or false? False. This was never about the fee increase. Yeah, it sucks to have to continually charge our customers more and more to keep up with Etsy's desire to rake in a continual growing percentage of our sales. But that's not our biggest issue. We did a user poll way back in the day before the strike started on Reddit. We asked everyone if Etsy were to agree to one and only one of our demands, which one would you want it to be? The fee increase was pretty high up there because it was fresh in everyone's minds, but it wasn't the one. What do you think? Which demand was most important to our early supporters on Reddit? Was it A, crack down on resellers masquerading factory made items as handmade? B, better support for shops affected by AI? C, end the star seller program? Or D, make offsite ads optional, not mandatory? It looks like we're getting a bunch of random guesses. Resellers was the one. That was the one that everybody cared about most. Now, a disclaimer, when we say resellers, we do not mean people that design their items and use production partners. We mean people passing off items mass produced in sweatshops that they did not design themselves as handmade. It makes sense that would be high on the list because it's horrible for the long-term success of Etsy itself. Yeah, they can make a ton of profit if a bunch of buyers get tricked into spending 3 times as much for an Amazon or an AliExpress product because they think it's handmade, but then those buyers don't come back. And that's horrible for all of us. You know how Etsy was a B Corp for so many years? Part of being a B Corp is you have to be transparent. You have to issue reports to let everyone know exactly what is going on inside your company. Etsy issues transparency reports every year, something they started doing when they were a B Corp. When they stopped being a B Corp, they waited a couple years to stop putting the data on those transparency reports. Because of that, we have data from Etsy that tells us exactly why the reseller problem has gotten so bad. What you see from 2014 to 2017 is a growing platform with quite a few people trying to get in that aren't supposed to be there. And you see Etsy handling it by closing those accounts, the pink bars in the graph, and getting better and better at handling the problem over time. Now, keep in mind, the end of 2017 is when all those changes happened and Etsy decided to drop B Corp certification. In 2018, there's more flags, but only about 1/10 of the account closures. It's even worse in 2019. Then in 2020 and 2021, there's a ton of reports, but no data at all on reviews or closures. Just paragraphs of corporate speak about how important marketplace integrity is to Etsy. I found this data really. When I found it, I realized I had been giving Etsy the benefit of the doubt. I figured the reseller problem was just something that had gotten out of hand over the years as the platform grew. This looks like they just stopped enforcing their own policies. And then think about everything in combination. They stop enforcing their own terms, do more and more with AI bots instead of actually paying human employees. They keep raising our fees. And when buyers stop coming back, they keep new ones coming in by starting an ads program that they force us to pay for. And then that's not even enough. They got to come up with another program to micromanage us and see just how much they can get out of us on a daily basis. Over the years, those who can get out do. And then that makes things even worse for the people that are left behind. And then eventually, Etsy becomes known as the place where you can go to get scammed into paying 3 times as much for something because you think it's handmade. We have to band together to fight back. These changes hurt sellers, they hurt customers, and they hurt Etsy itself. Too many people depend on Etsy. We have to fight to make our voices heard, to make the needs of sellers known. We have to fight to make Etsy a platform where both Etsy and Etsy sellers can thrive. It will be hard. We're going to have to keep at it and we can't give up. But I believe in us and I'll tell you why. If anyone can do it, we can. Have you ever thought about all the things you got to be good at to run a successful Etsy shop? First, you got to have some sort of creative skill, like an artisan craft or something you're good at designing, or the ability to curate a cohesive collection. That's creative too. You got to be good enough at math to figure out prices that work for what you're selling. You got to write persuasive product descriptions. Yeah, I know Etsy hides them, but you want them to be there for the people that manage to find them. You got to be good at time management. On platforms like Etsy, there's something I like to call the product creation treadmill. You have to keep producing new things on a regular schedule, or the algorithm will decide you are irrelevant. And a lot have incredible computer skills too: social media marketing, video production, web development, programming, graphic design. Put a bunch of Etsy sellers together in a room, and the skills add up like you wouldn't believe. What happens when a ton of exceptional people join together and work towards a single goal? We're about to find out. And let's talk about what accomplished so far. With zero advertising and a 100% word of mouth movement, we managed to get an online petition to reach 82,000 people in only 4 weeks. We made so much noise that the founder of Etsy, Rob Kalin, couldn't stay silent. He hadn't posted on Twitter in 7.5 years, but he tweeted in support of us. We reached the founder of Etsy, and he supports us. That's about the best proof we could possibly get that we're working for a just cause. Now, Rob Kalin is the founder of Etsy, so he's the original CEO too. And the day after he sent that tweet, Etsy's current CEO, Josh Silverman, also had something to say about Etsy sellers. And I quote, "Each of our sellers is a blade of grass in a tornado. They're someone you haven't heard of." Well, I guess it's fitting that Josh Silverman compared us to blades of grass because it doesn't get any more grassroots than this. So, moving forward, we aren't about an Etsy strike anymore. The Etsy strike was just our first step, and it was a pretty impressive step. We made a big sacrifice, and we did get something out of it from Etsy. They aren't admitting that the changes to the Star Seller program were in response to the strike. Yeah, sure, Etsy. They just happened to occur right after the strike, and they just happened to match exactly what we were saying about why it sucked in all those interviews. Now, the changes to Star Seller don't touch a lot of the problems we're having with Etsy. What it shows us is that it's possible to influence them to make changes if we make enough noise about what it's actually like for us on the platform. With a caveat, whatever we do, we need to make sure that we do not hurt other Etsy sellers. So, a caution: don't tell people not to shop on Etsy. Too many of us depend on Etsy to make a living. What we want to do is tell our supporters to do some research. Google the shop names of your favorite Etsy shops and check to see if any of them are trying to build an independent online shop. It's really hard to do, and when our customers come support us on our independent stores, we appreciate it so much. We are just getting started, but we already have something cool to show you today. I'm about to reveal for the first time ever our brand new seller member directory. And I was going to have this prepped in a tab, but thanks to our technical difficulties, I failed to do that. So now I have to actually type it into the address bar. So give me a second. indiesellersguild.org/shops. These work. These load. So now we wait on it to load. Here we go. Member shops. Oh yeah, and it's really weird because I had to lower it. But so this is it'll look a little bit different. This is like shrunk way down. So this is like what it would look like on a tablet, on a computer. It looks a little bit different. But so here is the seller directory in its very, very first form. We are still working on it. There will be more stuff. But we're gonna basically, it'll be a place where you can post your shop and the shop you want people to shop at, versus the one that charges you very high fees. Or, you can post your Etsy shop too if you want. You know how I talked about resellers? No resellers here. We have actual people verifying each Indie Sellers Guild member, and we've worked hard on a verification system that is fair and transparent and lets the indie sellers in but keeps the resellers out. Right now, you can search by names and categories and keywords. And on your member profile, there is a link that supporters can click on to shop from you wherever you prefer. Our sellers also get verified guild cards and badges to display so that customers on any platform can shop to them at confidence. Now, this is going to look a little different than because I'm logged into my shop. So the member shops is from in the menu, but if you're logged out, there's like our members and it's all by itself. The seller member badges, a little preview of them is right here. They're all designed to be overlaid over stuff. And then here's the seller membership cards. We've got 4 of them right now. We'll probably change out some of the colorful ones for fun stuff, for different time periods. All of this is just the window dressing. The real thing we offer is the ability to unite, to not be alone anymore. It's a whole lot easier to get out of that quicksand when there are other people around to give you a hand up. We're going to keep putting pressure on Etsy to do better. Right now, they're trying to force US-based sellers to give our bank account info to a third-party service that's been embroiled in lawsuits over privacy violations. We are fighting that. We have people who have signed up to help with outreach and a long list of journalists who have their eyes on us because of what happened with the strike. We are going to spread the word about the injustices we face as sellers in the platform economy. Does it feel like Etsy just doesn't listen to you anymore? We will give you a voice. More information on our next steps will be posted very shortly. Please make sure to follow us on your social media of choice and check back for updates so the algorithm can't hide it from you. We're going to work together and we're going to build something new, something amazing, something that hasn't been seen before. Let's do this. All right. I think the next part, we didn't exactly rehearse this, but the next part is going to be a panel.
Yes, we have our changeover here. So hello, everyone. I am Sam. I'm going to be moderating our panel today where we have a few questions that we'll talk about we've prepared ahead, and then we're also getting questions from the chat. So if you have questions after hearing Chiara and Christy talk, please type them in the chat. We have moderators who are passing them on to us. So I'm going to ask each member of our illustrious panel here to introduce themselves and explain a little bit about how they got to be involved with the guild. So let's start off with Maddie.
Can you hear me? Okay, hi, I'm Maddie. My pronouns are they and she. I've been on Etsy since about 2019. I'm an Etsy full-timer. It is my full-time job, and I do clothing basically. And I got involved with the Etsy strike fairly early on. My main thing was the price increase. I was sick of not being able to fight back, and I saw the strike and the guild as the best way to do that.
And let's go to Emma.
Hi, can you hear me all right? Cool. My name is Emma, or Em, and I've been on Etsy since 2017, kind of on and off. I have a really small shop. I don't really make much money out of it. I've pretty much just like broken even this whole time. And I sell like pins, patches, stickers. And I got involved with the Etsy strike during the week where we were on strike. And I slowly started helping with messages, with moderation, and yeah, now I'm really lucky to be part of this amazing team.
And you've already heard a little bit from Christy and Chiara, so I'll just introduce myself a little bit. I'm Sam Close. I am an assistant professor of communication who started studying Etsy in digital crafting a decade ago for my dissertation. So I've been following Etsy and Ravelry for a very long time. And I had my own Etsy shop in 2015 where I was trying to sell handmade knitted hats and discovered just how difficult it is to do when you have another full-time job. So speaking of full-time jobs and all of the activities and things that Etsy sellers have to do and figure out how to kind of handle their lives. We've already had a question from the chat about what the next steps of the guild are, what is the future, and what kind of services they might be able to provide for members. So can I pass that over to Chiara to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. I know Christy has some news to announce about things we're working on. Um, but in terms of the specific question from the chat about healthcare, we would love to do healthcare. I think that's more a like logistics question. That is something unions work to provide. It's something that would really help out Etsy sellers if they could get, because obviously that's something we can't get from our employer now. I think it's more a matter of like, yes, would love to, need a bit more infrastructure and research to figure out how. Because at least, I can't even speak honestly outside the US, but certainly in the US it is depressingly complicated. And so that's something we're going to have to work on. Um, there's kind of next, we're working on ways to build resources for our current members. We're working on ways to outreach for, yes, of course, in the chat. We're working on ways to outreach to more members, to connect with other nonprofits and organizations. There's some like watchdog organizations that for some of these issues we're seeing on with Plaid, with PayPal, with these online companies doing some very shady things. So we're building our connections. We're finding more people. We're working on stuff. I know that's a little vague, but it's hard because so much of it is determined by what the sellers need. And so I don't want to say we're going to do this, because if the members are like, hey, I don't actually want that, I want this thing over here, then that's what we're going to go do. And so a lot of it's being responsive to what the members want. And and also, as things are in the works, I don't want to promise things until we've had a chance to sit down and make sure we're able to actually give them to you. So, but we're looking at lots of things that you can do as a group. Things we've talked about, things like wholesale accounts with suppliers. We've talked about things like prepping website templates or customer service emails, resources like that sellers can just, copy paste and use for their own businesses. Having like a cache of files for that. We've talked about trainings on digital media skills, lectures on fees and taxes and shipping, interstate and international, because that's always changing. There's another nonprofit that we're working with on that stuff. So a lot of different things in the works for you guys. And then Christy, in my frame, Christy's video is frozen. I don't know if it is for anybody else. Okay, excellent. So that's just my screen. Christy just had a meeting and some exciting new thing we're working on as well. If you want to take over, Christy.
Yeah, so one of our next projects is we want to basically come up with kind of a list of what we're looking for in a marketplace. If there were a marketplace that makes promises to its members, what do we want those promises to be? What So we're then the next step after that is to have like ISG accredited, like accreditation that we offer to marketplaces. And I've actually been in talks with Go Imagine, and they are interested in being the first to enter our marketplace accreditation program. So we'll hopefully have more exciting things to announce on that later. But that's been our most recent yay.
So, speaking of all of these exciting things that we're looking and wanting to do, one of the questions that we've heard from the members who've joined our Discord is this worry that we're actually trying to go too big and saying ISG, the Indie Sellers Guild, is a young nonprofit. It's run on volunteer labor right now. And so, how are you going to be able to keep this momentum going and deliver on some of these promises that you're making, these things that you want to do? I'll send this to Maddie to start us off.
Sure. I mean, so when this whole thing started, there were what, like 6 or 8 of us in a email thread and a Reddit chat, and since then it's ballooned into 30,000 Etsy sellers participating in the strike, another 55,000 supporting us, and then today's the day of the ISG launch, and I haven't kept up with the count, but I think we're over 2,000. Am I wrong? We're over 2,000 members already. So it's really, it's clear that there's a tremendous desire to start working to level the playing field between these giant tech platforms and these individual users who right now really don't have any power, except occasionally when we manage to band together and pull something off like the Etsy strike. And so I really do, I really think the sky is the limit based on having seen this grow from a dozen to a few thousand to tens of thousands. If anyone, I like what Christy said earlier. If anybody can pull this kind of thing off, it's this group, because we've got such a diversity of people and a diversity of talents. We'll see. We're not asking anybody to take it on faith. We're just asking people to jump in and work alongside of us.
Okay, so the next question that we've seen in the chat here is, are you looking to get set up as a union? Why guild? I'm going to throw that back over to Chiara.
Yeah, so this comes up a lot, and it's a little complicated. So the reason we sorry, I'm just collecting my thoughts because, again, this is a tricky question that comes up multiple times. We talk about being a union because that's really the role we're trying to fill for sellers, right? We're viewing this as, okay, we're all technically small businesses, but most Etsy sellers are like a single business from their home, much more like a gig worker or an employee for a platform that has massive control over what they can do. And we're saying this really isn't like a business interacting with another business. This is much more like an employee dictating terms, an employer dictating terms to an employee. So we're seeing the need for an organization to work for the rights of those workers. But the reason we're not a union in the name is because in the US, you cannot file to be a union unless you are employees, which is really a problem beyond just us, right? There's so many people working in non-traditional workplaces now, so many people that work not as employees, and they can't get any of the protections of, there are laws, as poorly enforced as they may be in some cases, but there are laws on the books in the US to protect employees and their they have protected speech about their employer and about their workplace at their workplace. The National Labor Relations Board is there to protect in part to protect employee rights, but none of that applies if you're not a traditional employee. And so we can't file as a union. We are not a certified union with the National Labor Relations Board in the US. That is how we want to act, but we legally can't file that paperwork. We are a registered nonprofit in the state of Rhode Island. The next step is filing for IRS tax exemption, and that's where we will have to determine what kind of nonprofit we file as. There's several different ones, and we want to consult with the lawyer to find out exactly which one and the best way to file that paperwork, because there's kind of different, slightly different rules depending on the different different categories that you pick there. So we picked the name Guild just because again, we're not legally a union. We didn't want to be fully confusing there, although this led to its own kind of confusion. Guild is more often used for kind of groups of for non-union groups of people coming together. It also, historically is what craftsmen used in the Middle Ages when they came together and set regulations and advocated for themselves. So it's got that connection. So that's where that distinction comes in. So that's why we say we are building an organization to act like a union, but not saying we are one, because we have not filed that. We cannot file that paperwork to do that. That would require changing US labor law, which, while I'd love to, is beyond our scope right now. We just talked about not biting off more than we can chew. I'm not going to commit to that one just yet. But then I saw it to tie into that. There was a question about adding board members. So to just tell you a little bit of how this works, this is where we really are structured like a union. I drafted the bylaws as part of that committee, and I used essentially like freelancer and gig worker unions bylaws as my model. And so the board members are actually elected. We haven't had those elections yet because we've been setting up the infrastructure, including how to communicate with members and hold votes. So everyone right now we're the interim board and the interim officers of basically who's been showing up from the beginning and had the time to volunteer. That's who's here right now. But any seller member can be nominated to be on the board, and all seller members can vote for board members, and then ally members, while they cannot vote, can also hold officer positions. And very briefly to run through those, we have a president and a vice president and 2 secretary treasurers. Each of essentially the president and vice president do the same job of coordinating between committees and with the board, and the secretary treasurers keep track of the money and take meeting minutes. We have 2 of each because we're volunteers and we have other lives and we wanted to duplicate and share the workload. The council will have representatives for handmade, vintage, and craft goods, as well as US and international sellers, and then at-large positions. And we will be holding those elections very shortly. And if anyone wants to get involved and is interested in being on the board, or we call it a council, please get involved. You can absolutely do that. But that's how the guild is run and how the board works.
So kind of building off that. Sorry. So kind of building off of that, if you're interested in getting involved, and especially in becoming a seller member, Em has been working a lot on getting that set up. And so I'm going to throw the question to her. How do you get involved?
Yeah, so like Chira just explained, we have 2 kinds of members, ally members and seller members. Anyone can sign up to be an ally. It's super quick on the website, and currently we're organizing on Discord. And we're always looking for volunteers. There's always things to do, and always new ideas that we would love to work on. And then for a seller member, which is anyone who fits the definition of an indie seller online, you can apply, and we need a few things from you. So we ask for a recent order, a screenshot of a recent order, to prove that you are in fact an indie seller. And then 1 to 3 behind the scenes pictures, so we can identify that you are in fact the person making or curating the things that you sell. And then, sorry, I got distracted. So seller members, like Chara said, can be chairs, and they can be on the council, but any member can get involved. Yeah, did I Did I forget something? um,
No, you're good. And I think, we are around. Just like Sharon said, everybody who's here is here because they started showing up. And so once you join, you'll have access to the guild Discord. And people are also communicating, I think, on Reddit. And so you can jump in and start contributing to all of these conversations. So the next question that I wanted to bring out kind of relates to all of these issues of support, right? How are you supporting? How are people getting involved? And so, Christy, how is the ISG supported financially? What is the kind of plan around that?
We are entirely funded by donations. So, yeah, they go directly to pay for guild expenses like web hosting. Emails is something we're going to have to get set up that is going to cost money very shortly. um, we're hoping to be able to do bigger stuff like, consulting a lawyer and whatnot. Like, there's things like issues that have come up recently in discussions on the Discord, like IP and art theft and merchants freezing people's accounts so they can't access their money. And it's like things that, in order to really figure out what to do, we would need to consult with someone who understands the law. And we're really hoping to do that. And that would be something that we would definitely need donations to be able to do that kind of a thing. We do treasury reports. So anytime, we spend money on anything, it goes in a report and they're all on the website, and transparency is very important to us.
Yeah. So again, if you have any questions, please do just go ahead and type them in any of the chats in the places that we are live, and that can get passed on to the panel here. But I think I see one already. So are there any plans for a fundraising drive in the near future? Which is, I think, my cue to bring up our donate now button here. And let me toss that question to Emma.
While we don't have any, I guess, traditional fundraising drives, something that we're working on, and I am working on personally, is getting sort of like merch set up. So we're going to give ally members, not ally members, any members or anyone really, the option of either selling our logo on certain things and giving us and donating the proceeds. I mean, after they've paid themselves, of course, and all their materials, or creating kind of any design that has anything to do with, supporting indie sellers, supporting small businesses, and designing and again donating the profits from those. And that'll all be on the website in a separate page. And if anyone wants to get involved, that would be great. If you have any design ideas, any machines, any way that you can make things yourself, I would really urge you to join the Discord. But yeah, so that's our main fundraising, I guess, drive, except apart from just anyone donating.
So a question that I've heard a lot, and I'm going to use my moderator privilege to ask it to myself for a moment, is why don't you just move to another platform? And I think this maybe comes from people who haven't had as much experience selling, because I know that a lot of folks have moved to other platforms and have added in different platforms at different times. And so, if you've done that, that it's a lot of work. There's an image in the popular culture of social media as something that's easy and fast and fun to do, and none of that applies to handmade goods and crafts. And I think that the other thing that's really important to talk about here, and that you got coming from Christy's presentation, talking about how all of this got started, is that the only reason that platforms like Etsy, like Uber, like Lyft, like TaskRabbit, et cetera, are successful is because they're partnerships, right? They're partnerships between the company, between the people who work for the company, and between the buyers who buy things at the company, and between the users who make things, right, that get sold on the sites. And so Etsy only became the success that it is, and the other platforms are only the successes that they are because of the way that they've worked together with sellers, right, and with crafters. And so it's super important for us to be able to really own that, and to make this a fair partnership that works in a way that's beneficial for everybody involved. Kind of going back to the roots of a rising tide lifts all boats. So I don't know. I'm not seeing any other questions from the chat. Em, did you want to talk a little? Sorry, Em, did you want to talk a little bit again about member verification while folks are gathering their thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So for member verification, we are still figuring out all the best ways and the different ways that we can get people verified without asking far too much from them or asking for like really difficult, any difficult things. So again, we would love your input on any of those things. Again, if you want to join the Discord, let us know or contact us on the website if you have any ideas that aren't on the form currently. And we also have an accessibility button that you can check, and all that does is it allows you to kind of bypass taking pictures, and we'll email you directly so we can verify you without that. So we really want to make it an easy process for actual indie sellers, but a difficult one and an impossible one for resellers, because I mean, personally, the reseller problem is kind of my biggest issue with Etsy. And I've been working really hard on trying to make sure that the indie sellers seller member badge actually means something and actually gives customers the confidence to be like, I'm sure that that is actually handmade, actually from an indie seller, because that's not the issue with Etsy right now. They're not doing it, and it's impossible to get shops taken down. I've spent hours reporting shops myself, and they're all still there. You don't get anything back from Etsy. They don't do anything. As Christy had talked about earlier with the numbers, they used to actually take down shops, and now they don't. So I want the Indie Sellers Guild seller member badge to actually mean something.
Okay, and then talking about, things meaning something, the seller's badge meaning something. One of the things that we think is really important to talk about here now, while we have all of your attention, is that we as the Guild are really, really committed to diversity and equity. I hope that you've been getting that through everything that we've been saying before. You might have noticed that there are some things in common between all of us, right? We are all white folks here on the screen. And I think that reflects a little bit the fact that we're a volunteer-run organization, and there's privilege involved in who has the time and the spiritual energy really to volunteer. But also, this is an interim board, and we would be super duper excited to see other folks who don't look like us running for positions, because I know that we have members out there who don't look like us. And we're diverse in a lot of other different ways as well. And so I'm going to, yeah, we already have one of our mods is like, hey, I'm not a white person. So this is very good. You can see it's already kind of in place. It just ends up who's on the screen right now. And so I want to toss it over to Christy to talk about how diversity and equity has been kind of folded into the Guild's operations as we've moved from the Etsy strike into all of this organization.
Well, you've actually asked me a question that I did not prep for, so this is just going to be off the cusp of my head. But it's so I'm just going to tell you my personal on all of this. Like, I feel like the thing that makes humanity strong is how different we all are. Like, if you have too much information from like people who are all the same, you're going to be missing important things. You're going to it's like literally we want to create an organization that works for everybody. So we need everybody, and we want everybody to, be in, the position to be able to create the organization that works for everybody. So hopefully that makes sense. But just that is our strength. Literally every single area that we have managed to get diversity, I'm just like, because that's what we need.
Yeah, and I know like one of the first committees that got started from members was an accessibility committee. Because a lot of the people who are most impacted by things, especially like the kind of churn of the Star Seller program and the algorithms, are folks who are disabled. So I'm going to pass us over to Chiara, who's going to talk a little bit about the Guild and how the Guild works together before we start to kind of head towards the end here. So if you have any of those questions, make sure you're sticking them in the chat now.
Yeah, so I just wanted kind of building on all of this and about how, what Christy said is our strength is in the group that we have is just really to emphasize that we are breaking new ground here. This is how unions used to start before the National Labor Relations Board, before you could call for a union vote and have a government agency come in and moderate that. This is what happened, is a group of workers got together and said, we need to protect ourselves and advocate for ourselves. That's what we're doing here. This is how it's always begun. And the reason we are able to do so much is because we are completely driven by our membership, by the sellers. When we need something done, no, we don't have a graphic designer on hire, but I've got like 10 volunteers who know how to make graphics that I grab and say, hey, does anyone have time to help me with this? And somebody's got an hour to help out. And that just, it lets us be so innovative. It lets us have so much, like we've said, the breadth of experience all combined together. And that's how we're able to get done what we get done, is because it's driven by the membership. And when we need things, we draw from everybody, from thousands of people coming together, and we're able to use the resources of all their experience and connections. So I just wanted to make that final point. But I did see there was a important little question about seller member badges that I think Christy can answer.
Yeah, so the actually accessing the seller member badges, we have designed that to where that part of the website is only visible to people who have a verified seller membership. And then like a lot of them are designed to be like, combined with other stuff and overlaid. So, it would be like if somebody just took the badge, it would technically be possible for somebody to download it, but like getting, to everything people cannot do unless they're a seller member. And then we also, with the membership cards, that is unique to each account. And so if, you needed to like really check somebody, you could always ask the membership card, and then we will have ways to look up a member by their member number eventually in the system. So it will be possible eventually. We're still building all of this right now. So
and so sorry, Maddie, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, and just real quick, if for those of you who are already members and who have already received your cards, if you look, all the membership cards have I don't know what it's called, a serial number or a seller number or a member number maybe, which are unique and which can be verified on the ISG website. So if a customer is not sure, they can look at the membership card and be like, okay, number 42, wait a second, these don't match, there's a problem. Or these do match, so I should go ahead with the purchase.
Yeah, so another question that we've seen from the chat is if there's any plan to make the Guild a platform for selling. And this gets to that partnership with that we were talking about a little bit before. So Christy, do you want to expand on the kind of plans in relationship to marketplaces?
yeah, so I'll tell, like, honestly, like, because I was, involved in the strike and like back as early as February. So, as we're like building and doing all this stuff, I kind of had this thought in my head of, yeah, if Etsy ignores us, we're just gonna build our own Etsy. And then it was like, I'm a very optimistic person. I'm not always realistic. And then it was as we got later in the strike, and there's just marketplaces coming out of the woodwork wanting to like collaborate with us. And it's like, and that made me realize Etsy alternatives exist. The problem isn't building it. The problem is figuring out how to make it viable for us to actually be able to, run a profitable business on it. And with that, it got me kind of thinking of more of like where our place is in this, how we could actually help people the most. And like, even if there were an Etsy alternative, even if it was big, you would still need an organization like the Indie Sellers Guild to make sure that they stay honest. And so that's the role that we see ourselves playing in there. We will be the organization that helps you know whether or not you can trust the different marketplaces.
And Emma, I think you were going to jump in on that one.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to talk over anyone. But I think, sure, marketplaces are very important. That's where you build your shop. But I think, like Christy said, our focus is also on making sellers' experiences as easy and as fulfilling as possible on the marketplaces that already exist. Because sure, like you could move your shop, but do you still have resources? Do you know which one would fit best? We have this amazing spreadsheet made by our volunteers of a lot of marketplaces that exist and what's good about them, what's not as good. And like we had mentioned earlier, we are working on like actual partnerships with marketplaces that aren't Etsy. But for the people who want to stay on Etsy, we still want to help them. Like my shop is only on Etsy and I can't really see myself moving because I don't have the resources. I don't get enough sales. Like, I don't mind being on Etsy, but I think Etsy needs to make it easier for me. And that's what we're working on. Not necessarily making everything perfect in our own marketplace that, I think it's a bit idealistic and not necessarily the most kind of possible option right now.
Okay, so I think I am going to pass this over to Chiara to sort of talk about, I guess, next steps and last steps and start to bring us to a close here.
Sure. Well, before we talk about that, did we want to address these other questions about diversity? Maddie, you said you had something you wanted to add there.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think the reality is in sort of crafting culture, there's been a history of exclusionism towards people of color. It's been very white centric, the industry and the communities that for years and years and decades have kind of gathered around that. It's unfortunate, and it's something that this guild is going to, and also let's say that's reflected in Etsy's demographics. White people are overrepresented on Etsy, and Black people, specifically African American people, are underrepresented on Etsy. And if this guild rather, is going to be successful, it's really going to have to take to heart the need to challenge those dynamics that have existed and been entrenched for a really long time. Part of the way we do that is by addressing the culture among Etsy sellers. There's a very prominent culture of maybe like individualism among Etsy sellers, because there is a way, yes, in which we're all kind of in competition with each other for the same set of customers who have a finite amount of money. That's true. But we also have a lot still to gain from being in solidarity with each other and help boosting each other up in order to take on our common, antagonist or whatever, Etsy management. And I think what's so unique about this guild and about this project is that it's really trying to bring about a cultural shift among Etsy sellers that, yeah, sure, we are kind of in competition, but we do have a lot still to gain by being in solidarity. And as far as specifically what we're going to do to amplify marginalized people or marginalized points of view, I want to say, frankly, I don't think it would really be appropriate for me to sit here now and lay out a fully hashed out plan because of the nature of this panel. I think it's something that the work we need to do is to establish an infrastructure whereby we can have an authentically democratic and representative, community or union or guild, where the voices that may have been being marginalized this whole time are given new opportunities and fair opportunities to speak up. And that's going to depend on our membership, and it's going to depend on more than just the 5 of us.
Yeah, and so I really want to urge everyone to, we can do things. What's already been accomplished is incredible. And the power that we do have in an age of social media, in an age of all of these different people coming together, is a power to be heard that you didn't necessarily have in the older days of unions. And the louder we talk, the more and more Etsy and other marketplaces are going to be pressed by journalists when they talk to them to say, hey, what are you doing with that Indie Sellers Guild? How are you communicating with your sellers? We've been hearing talk about there being problems in your community. And so we have a lot that we can do to change the narrative and make these platforms really sit up and pay attention. That's beyond kind of the old imaginaries of a strike where it's just, well, nobody sells anything. Okay, maybe we're not going to do that, but there's a lot. Etsy's brand is built on photos that sellers have taken. Etsy's brand is built on quotes that Etsy sellers have done, interviews that they've done with the platform. All of the objects, right, that are sold, all of the patterns that are drafted and sold come from members. And so nothing can move forward with Etsy, with any of these marketplaces, without this partnership. And so we have a lot more power than I think it seems like sometimes.
And I'll just add, I think we haven't explicitly said it, but we are absolutely international. Doesn't matter where you're from, as long as you have an online shop, that's fine. I mean, I'm Canadian. I don't know if anyone can tell from my accent. But we have members from Australia, Germany, United Kingdom, Greece. This is not a US exclusive thing, which does make the kind of legal part a bit harder. But it's really for all sellers internationally.
All right, I think that is good. Tiara, do you want to close this out?
Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for participating, chiming in the chat. It's a lot more interesting to answer questions people are asking than to come up with things to say ourselves. So we really appreciate participating. Thank you to all the volunteers you don't see, to our mods who are sitting there behind the scenes, making sure we see your questions and managing things and answering things in the chat. And to all of our volunteers who did outreach for us, who sent out press releases and posted on social media. This really has been a team effort, and we so appreciate you. I just want to end on the last couple, the next steps that we can all do. We are, I think, us here at the Guild are probably going to take like a day or two breather because this was a lot of work, and I know I am tired. But then we're gonna come back together and we'll have meetings. We have at least once a month open meetings to all members where we're gonna start figuring out our next moves, taking all these grand ideas and hashing them down into like actionable plans. But for everyone else, obviously, if you haven't joined yet, I urge you to join. It's awesome. We hang out in Discord and talk about how to make things better for sellers. If you can donate, please do so. Even a couple dollars adds up. Like Christy said, we're all volunteers. All that money goes directly to the things the Guild needs. And I do treasury reports every month, so you know exactly where that money goes. Those in the meeting minutes are always on the website for members. then the beyond that, it's about spreading the word and reaching people, and not just finding other sellers, but finding other organizations, finding people with like podcasts and YouTube videos with reach, finding other communities and that we can connect with, because this is really built on people and relationships, and the more people we can connect with, the stronger we will be. So thank you again so much for watching and participating, and yeah, we hope to work with you all more in the future.